But Kevin, let's get into it. First and foremost, let's start at the top of the hour. Let's start talking about the game a little bit. We're a couple days post-mortem from that. I was there. I know you were there as well. And it's just was a great buzzing environment in the stadium. The Bills seemed to control play for the majority of the day within time of possession for the first three quarters. Everything looked fairly smooth. Looked like no one was really stopping anybody for much of the day. But then we had a few Chiefs stops, and that's really all it took. The Bills did buckle down a little bit on defense, switching a few things up, but it just wasn't enough with a Tyler Bass miss. Kick you got to have from that distance in that range in this type of environment. Just inexcusable to miss that style of field goal. Nowadays, it's he's paid to make that kick. This isn't a kicker that hasn't been in these moments before. So, Kevin, tell me first and foremost, give me your thoughts and your initial reactions from the stadium.
It was heartbreaking, and it's pretty sad because I have the exact same photo of myself walking out of the stadium last year as I now do this year. Same outfit, same Bills scarf, same dejected look, where it's just like, why? Why does it always happen? Why can we never get over the hump? And once I got home the other night, I needed some time to just decompress and kind of let out my emotions. So I recorded a video from this spot just on my phone. I obviously didn't go live or anything. And I just basically said that it's just so infuriating when you think that you finally have the Chiefs where you want them. And Mahomes had to go on the road for the first time in his playoff career. The Chiefs had to play in front of Bills Mafia. And you think that the Bills are catching their stride at the right time. And it still comes back to slap them right in the face. And as I said in the video, I didn't even want to get into the specific plays because there are a bunch of those that I'm sure we can get into tonight because that's the point of this show. We don't want to harp on it too much, but there are some plays that warrant us talking about them before we officially, put the closing marks on this season. But I was saying I didn't even want to get into the specific plays because it feels like no matter what happened, the Chiefs were going to find a way to win that game. Like, even if Tyler Bass made that field goal, do you not think that Patrick Mahomes would have led the Chiefs down the field with 1:45 and 2 timeouts? It just seemed inevitable that no matter what happened, Diggs made that catch. Sherfield made that catch. Allen hit Shakir in the end zone. Mahomes was still going to come back and lead the Chiefs to victory. It just seemed that way. And that's why it's so frustrating because it seems like no matter what this team does, they are always going to be short. And looking back to 2020, you could tell that the Bills weren't ready. They were inexperienced, and you say, okay, let's reload. We'll be back next year. 2021, 13 seconds. What was the main thing that the Bills needed? A pass rusher. Okay, so you go get Von Miller. There's no way the Bills are not winning the Super Bowl now, right? And then last year, aside from the whole DeMar Hamlin incident, the defensive line was just decimated with injuries, and they got gashed the whole day. So then you build up the defensive line, and you think you finally have the roster in place. And honestly, yeah, the defensive line still did not produce. But I think this just comes down to an execution standpoint. Sure, you could make your remarks on McDermott and the coaching staff or Brandon Beane for not building up the roster the best he could have, especially from a wide receiver standpoint. But at the end of the day, the Bills are not that far off. They are simply 1, 2, maybe 3 plays off from being in the AFC Championship game, and this show would be a lot different. And that's why it's so infuriating and dejecting and just so many emotions where it's like you kind of expect it by now. It doesn't hurt as much because we're so used to it, but at the same time, it hurts that much more.
I think what's interesting is the point you brought up. What could have been done? I think the clock was the number one thing in the Bills' favor, right? So after they had got down, they'd converted a couple of fourth downs. They were inside the 25-yard line-ish, and they ran a 1st and 10 run. They wanted to get it to the 2-minute warning. I guess I see the theory there. They were able to key in on the run a little bit more in the fourth quarter, and they were able to kind of prevent James Cook from really get going a ton throughout the second half. I understand the run to stop the clock. From there, though, what do? Do you make them use their timeouts? Do you run the ball, get some more yardage, make that kick a little bit shorter? Because apparently they needed it. They needed more yards because apparently that was too long of a field goal in the conditions, even though things looked fine. remotely fine. And it's a place he's kicked many, many times. The Diggs dump off is a play I want to talk about. I don't think I take that play. I think I take the end zone shot with the receiver open and a dagger barely gets knocked off the line a little bit by Chris Jones, barely enough to affect the throw. You go for the touch. The only way the Bills are winning that game was being up 4. There is no chance being up tied, or even if they were up 3 again. There's no way that the Bills are going to hold on to that lead. I mean, Patrick Mahomes can get us down as quickly as 13 seconds with a few timeouts. So do you think that a minute and like with the way the defense played okay, but now with Patrick Mahomes calling his best plays of the day and in a minute and 45 scenario, he's at least getting in field goal range. So they're at least winning on a field goal. Like, sure, tip balls, things could go anyway. Someone could fumble again. I guess those are conceivable outcomes. We've seen him turn the ball over to end drives in the past with a Taron Johnson interception last year. And as far as this season goes, they were unable. They turned it over on downs. So I guess those are conceivable. They only have 3 downs in this instance too, Kevin. That's a big difference because it's a tie game rather than being down. So there are a few factors that could have stepped up to stop him from needing a field goal. I don't see it happening. Not with the way AJ Klein was covering. I mean, he can't get it done against the pass. That's why they didn't have linebackers to match up with 12 and 13 personnel, even though Eric Turner tweeted today the Bills were fairly good in nickel against 12 personnel. So it wasn't like they were getting totally bullied. The couple plays that I saw, the DBs were getting in the backfield, a couple of missed tackles on a cold night, things to be expected against a high-flying style of offense. But ultimately, a couple of missed reads, they buckled down defensively in the fourth quarter. So you never know if they could have made that final stop on that last drive. But I do know that up 4 is a totally different experience. It's a totally different game. That's not to say Patrick Mahomes can't do it. He sure can. But that's a totally different environment to be up 4 there in that situation. Then you don't even know that Diggs is getting the first down on the crosser on that shot. I think he maybe gets 6 yards. Sure, the clock's running. Okay, the outcome could be okay. Maybe the field goal shorter. So sure, in hindsight, it's like, okay, I would have dumped it off because the alternative was an incomplete pass in the end zone. So obviously you're going to say that that's quite frankly what should have happened. And I don't think he gets the first down there in my experience. And then the deep shot to start that drive to Diggs that he clearly dropped. Does that really change much? Like ultimately they got down to that yard line. The difference was it maybe helped them because now there's 2 minutes left and they're on the same spot rather than 7 minutes left. So I'm not going to sit here and say that specific drop mattered. All that would have done was got the ball back to Mahomes quicker with more time. I don't know. They ended up getting down to that exact yard line. So I'm not exactly sure how that one changed, but some of the Sherfield ones are brutal. Like he's got to come down with some of those balls, just period. Like he can't have one or the other is fine. He can't have 2 dimes in his hand and he's got to come up with the ball. So does Diggs, but I don't know that is the game-changing play, Kevin. What is your opinion on both the Diggs drop and then the Diggs crosser where he chose to go to Shakir?
So I think that's a good point because I was thinking about that. And Mike Schultz brought this up today on WGR saying how if Diggs would have caught that, let's just say he caught it and he broke the tackle, ran it in for a touchdown. There's still 8 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
All that would have done was set off the fireworks like we saw in the 13 seconds game where it's just back and forth. Where Mahomes would have went down to score, and then Allen would have had to retaliate. And then maybe Mahomes would go down again, and then Allen has to go down with 20 seconds left or something like that. So I think that's a good point because as crucial as that was for Diggs to not catch that, you got to look at the clock because I believe there was 8:23 left. So that is a totally different outcome if he catches that. That doesn't mean that the Bills are going to win. It just means that it totally changes the complexion of the game. Now, I will say, I want to speak specifically on Stephon Diggs, not specifically on the outcome of this game, but I want to speak on Diggs as a wide receiver and as a person, because I love Stephon Diggs like we all do. But if you're going to pull what he pulled in the divisional round last year against Cincinnati, where he was throwing his arms up in Allen's face, and, we need to know the context. A lot of us are just guessing about what he was mad at. And to the points that we've been making all season, he's a competitor. He wants to win. So you're allowed to be angry on the sidelines. But he hasn't been able to back it up. And what I mean by that is he shows up as quarterback last year, and then he goes in the locker room and immediately dashes out before the media can get to him. And then he spends all offseason tweeting cryptically. And sure, he's gone on different podcasts and he said that he wants to be in Buffalo, but then he held out of minicamp and the OTAs, and there was that whole saga. And then you think everything's good. This season starts, and it's Allen and Diggs. The connection is rekindled. The chemistry is there. And then he started to tail off ever since the Giants game in week 6, mid-October. And then he falls short in the playoffs and again doesn't talk to the media. And now will probably be tweeting cryptically. That doesn't sit right with me, because if you're going to talk all offseason and be cryptic like that and have your brother tweet, Diggs got to get out of there. And I know he didn't have him tweet that. Trayvon Diggs can say whatever he wants. But if you're going to act like that, you need to be able to back it up. And if you can't back it up on the field, you at least better explain yourself to the media afterwards. So I don't like that. And I'm sure that doesn't sit right with a lot of fans. And I think that has led to a lot of people saying, we don't need Diggs anymore. And I'm not there yet, because Stephon Diggs is still one of the top receivers in this league. That doesn't mean that we should give up on him and that he's a diva and that he wants out of Buffalo. Simply that means that I think Bean needs to build up the wide receiver room more to help Stephon Diggs so he doesn't get double teamed or bracketed. And so it's not just an Allen Diggs show. That's why I think it's so important that the Bills draft a wide receiver with their first pick in the draft this year.
As we'll get into that in momentarily, at least a hierarchy of what we're going to be looking for this offseason between some draft coverage and some free agency stuff and some cap stuff that we'll be talking about. Like I said, I'll get into that shortly, kind of wrapping up on this game. I mean, James Cook did his usual drop a pass, put the ball in the ground, like 18 carries for 61 yards. I needed to see more from James Cook in the first place as well. Ty Johnson, 7 for 40. I thought was more effective. I thought he looked better. And then if you kind of recap the game a little bit at times, they had converted a 3rd and 4 to get into a situation about 3.5 minutes left that really was better than the catch. So I guess the theory here is, like, of course, Stephon Diggs needs to make that catch. It's inexcusable. But it's tough to say like that specifically is the reason they lost. They ended up driving down to that exact spot. I still think even at best, he catches that ball. And I think he goes down very close to where he catches that. So the difference here is, at one point I said, wow, he dropped that. And now the Bills had a 16 play with the missed field goal, 16 play drive to run 6:40 off the clock. That's almost a positive experience, especially I remember thinking in my head, okay, he dropped that pass just to start this drive. And we just had a Surefield 7-yard little dash over there to convert the first down. The Bills have 1st and 10 at the 27 with 2:42 on the clock, Kevin. Give me your thought process after that Surefield conversion, 2:42 on the clock. They decided to run right guard, so right up the middle for 1 yard to go to the 2-minute warning. But what was your initial reaction as they converted that at the 25-yard line, 1st and 10 with like 3 minutes left?
Well, first of all, I think the run game was working early in the game, and I like how they did that. They sustained those long drives to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, and they knew that their defense was banged up. So you said, okay, let's keep the clock moving. We're going to go on these long drives, and then we'll have Josh Allen take over like he does. And it worked for a while. But then they started teeing off on it because the Chiefs knew it was coming. There were a lot of times when James Cook would just run into his offensive lineman because the Chiefs would already be in the backfield because they knew that the run was coming. I mean, how many times you were there at the game when the PA announcer would say, now in the game is number 76, David Edwards, he is eligible. And it's like, oh, I know what's coming now. And if anything, that was supposed to be Latavius Murray, but he kind of worked his way out of that role. The Bills got rid of Leonard Fournette, didn't have that big bruiser, and James Cook would get stopped for negative yardage. I think there was even that rush. It might have been in the 4th quarter. Same exact type of scenario. And he got stopped in the backfield for a 4-yard loss. And then all of a sudden, a 2nd and 14. So I didn't like how they were calling the plays. But in terms of that specific series that you're talking about, 2nd and 9, that is going to come back to haunt me. And I'm sure the rest of Bills fans too, because this is where we need to get into it. And I want to hear what you think, and we want to hear from you guys as well in the comments, because I see it both ways. The fact that Allen went to Shakir but came up short really makes me think that on one side, you had Diggs wide open underneath, live to fight another down, keep the clock moving. It most likely would have been 3rd and 2, and then you continue what you did for the first 3 quarters of the game and just milk the clock and not have Patrick Mahomes get it. But then on the other side, you say, we can't be picky. If you can score a touchdown, score a touchdown. And if Chris Jones didn't back into Deion Dawkins, who backed into Josh Allen, we might be looking at a different outcome right now. So I understand that's Josh Allen's first read. And that's what makes him Josh Allen, because he makes those incredible plays where most of us, I'm sitting in the upper deck and I'm like, Diggs is wide open. And then you look and you're like, oh, Shakir's open. Oh, he was open for a sec. But that's why we have Josh Allen, because if you go back before the Allen days, that would have been a Tyrod pass. He would definitely have taken that underneath to Diggs. And sure, it would have worked. But that is why we love Josh Allen, because he is that gunslinger and he is aggressive and he can make those throws. But because the outcome wasn't there, we didn't like the decision. So I see it both ways. What do you think about that, Kevin? I mean, do you think he should have went to Shakir? Was that his first read, or should he have just played it safe, thrown it to Diggs, and try to keep milking the clock?
Here's the funny part. So after the Bills scored a touchdown there with a couple minutes left in the third quarter, 64% win probability. So the win probability was in your hands as you go to the kind of the end of the fourth quarter. They were driving a little bit, about 50-50 odds around the start of the fourth quarter. They did end up scoring on that drive, which was crazy. But also, you had the weird fourth. The fourth quarter was just super strange with the way that it all went down. A couple of mishaps on offense and the DeMar fake punt. You had a 50-50 to your question, though. Prior to that play, it was 50-50 straight across the board who was winning that football game. So it may have felt like they, after the DeMar play and a couple of other things, that things are slipping away. Statistically and odds based, by the time that 1st and 10 happened, where they ran up the middle, it was 50-50. By the time that the score that you could have scored on the Shakir play, it would have, so I formulated it out, 87% win probability of that touchdown, compared to an 8-yard play to Stephon Diggs, 51% win probability. So if you look at it like that, to basically only because it's increasing that you're going to take some time off the clock, still need to make a field goal maybe, or you need to get in the end zone, still only working with 3 downs. So it only increased the win probability on this individual play 1% to complete that pass for 8 yards. However, when you could win an 87% chance that Shakir goes incomplete, which was open, the right read, the throw still almost got there. It was close, even getting bumped into. If he doesn't get bumped into, it's the Gabe Davis all over again. It's the start of the whole 13 seconds game. Mahomes needs to respond. Yes, there's roughly 2 minutes left at that point, right around there, a minute 55. So it's really like the first Gabe Davis touchdown. That's about the time they had to go and score, and they did within 2 plays. With a Tyreek Hill busted coverage, he runs down the sideline, and the Bills respond with their timeouts, going down the field to 13 seconds. It was about the start of that. That's why I was like, in hindsight, you have an 87% chance to win. You make that throw. Just like when you see should you go for it on 4th down, and you're looking at probabilities and percentages, you 30% difference, you're going to go for it, right? It's the same theory to me, is that 8-yard pass to Diggs probably makes the field goal a little shorter, but overall in the grand arcing scheme of the game, it doesn't change anything. The results, so obviously you would take that. But in the moment, I saw Shakir open actually before I saw Diggs open. I said, I know where he's going with this ball. Shakir is going to drag his guy away, and he's going to be open in the post. The Gabe Davis route, he's going to be open. He was open. That's a touchdown. And I didn't even notice Allen getting run into. So to me, it was a touchdown. And then I noticed, okay, there was nothing on that ball. What happened? And then, you can see what happened. But to me, it's the right read to go up under 2 minutes. Now, under 2 minutes, it's the right read. You got to take the touchdown. There's definitely an argument to be had if that was 3rd down, if that was 4th down and you were going for it, then maybe not. But there's definitely early on in the stages of downs to take over a 4-point lead to, that's different than a 3-point lead. It's an extreme difference. That 4 points is enough to hopefully, with the McDermott defense, without the speed of Tyreek Hill now you're nickel and diming on their offense. We'll see what they're able to do. I think it's a little bit different than that 13-second game, as we saw in the fourth quarter, really, where the scoring kind of slowed down a little bit, minus the start of that where Isaiah Pacheco scored to start the quarter. So to me, it's the right read. I go up for all day under 2 minutes, but what would have happened if Diggs caught it? That's a different discussion, because now there's 8 minutes left and you're already on the 20, 25, 15, wherever that would have been. So it's a little bit different of a situation. But to me, you take the touchdown. It's the right read. It's a situation that you go up. And by all means, you do your best to play defense. You do everything you can to either commit a turnover, get a sack, do anything possible where he's pressured on the road in front of the crowd noise. I think is a little bit different than playing at Arrowhead. So to me, completely the right read in this situation. And I appreciate Josh Allen basically doing everything he can. It was a great play call. Honestly, that Diggs route is what kind of pushed the pressure up in the formation, and it's the right read. Ultimately, I'm completely fine with taking your lead in a divisional playoff game that gives you an 87% chance to win. I mean, ultimately, that's the decision that you make, and you hope to the best of you that you can make a stop, because they were starting to stop some plays in their nickel coverage, and they were able to do a few things late in that game to where I was feeling a little bit better defensively than I was in the third quarter. In the third quarter, I was like, we're not stopping them. But they did have some huge stops, including Travis Kelce blaming himself for the Poyer fumble on Mecole Hardman because he did not hold his block and Poyer wanted it more. So to me, the Bills won across the board. They won in time of possession. The way that they played this football game definitely, I think, once again, was one of the first times in playoff history where you lead a couple of different things between time of possession and a few other categories that led to a loss. I mean, they obviously did lead the turnover battle. They were getting some ball luck. The two Bills fumbles they recovered. The one went through the end zone for the Chiefs. So there was some ball luck there. And you thought maybe things were changing. You thought maybe the Bills had the luck. This might be the year. The fumble through the end zone, that was something that would happen to the Bills on the other end to go win a game. It's kind of reversed, Kevin. So didn't you think at one point as Josh was driving that maybe the fortunes had changed?
Yeah, I did. And I want to answer this question by Roy before I have a graphic that I want to pull up. So he was talking about that throw to Shakir. He said, I thought that throw was on third down. So what was the third down play? So I'm going back and looking at this just so we're all on the same page. So it was 1st and 10 at the Kansas City 27 with 2:42 left on the clock. James Cook, right guard to Kansas City 26 for 1 yard. So that ran them into the 2-minute warning. So it was 2nd and 9, and that's when he made that pass to Shakir, fell incomplete. That took 5 seconds off the clock. And then the 3rd and 9, he just rolled out to his right. Nothing was open, so he lived to fight another down and just threw it away. And then it was 4th and 9 with 1:47 left, and that's when Bass missed a field goal. So I thought they could have gotten a little bit more on that third down play, because as upset as I was that he missed Shakir on 2nd down, I was like, it's Josh Allen. He can pick it up on 3rd down. And then nothing was there. And it almost seemed like Josh thought in his head, or maybe someone was in his head saying, do not turn the ball over. Don't try to pull off heroics. Just throw it out, and we're going to kick the field goal and tie this thing up.
He had 2 receivers across his body, Kevin, that he could have thrown to, that he does throw to occasionally, and he did not do it.
That's what I was thinking too, especially when you see the replay from different angles. So it seems like in the 2-minute warning, someone was in his head saying, be smart, do not turn the ball over. This season's not going to come down to an interception. So he said, okay, I'm just going to throw it out of bounds. Tyler Bass come out, kick the field goal. Oh, never mind. So that leads me to the graphic that I was going to pull up here, because I saw this today and it's just so interesting, and it just kind of hits back at home again, because then you're like, oh man, this is our one time to win. Like, the Chiefs were vulnerable. I mean, look at these stats here. Time of possession, the Bills won. First downs, total yards, 3rd down conversions, 4th down conversions. They won the turnover battle, but did they win the game? No. And, someone tweeted this today and said, this is a McDermott problem. But honestly, I see it the other way. This is an execution problem. Because if you are winning in all those categories, that means that you played a very, very good game and a very well coached game, aside from, a few different decisions here and there. But like I said at the outset of the show tonight, this comes down to 2 to 4 plays that totally change the outcome of this game. So to me, say what you want about McDermott, I'm not mad at him for this game. I'm more mad at the execution, the missed field goal, the drop passes, the mishaps on defense. And to your point, they did tighten up as the game went on. But, that first drive coming out of the half, they marched right down the field. And then their second drive, for that matter, they did the same exact thing. So, yeah, I think this just comes down to an execution standpoint. And I really don't think the Bills are that far off. That's why I'm not one to say blow it up. It hasn't worked yet. Really, you legit just need 2 or 3 more plays to go your way. You need your big time players to make big time plays in the big moments. And we're looking at an AFC championship game right now.